Tonight, President Trump on the world stage. The president traveling to the NATO summit at The Hague hours after he announced a ceasefire between Israel and Iran, telling reporters that both countries had violated that ceasefire, then later that the ceasefire is in effect. This is early intel says the U.S. strikes on Iran failed to completely destroy its nuclear program and likely only set it back by a few months.
I'm Mary Bruce, traveling with the president in the Netherlands. I'll have much more ahead on what the president said that shocked our NATO allies.
I'm Ian Pannell reporting from Tel Aviv, just hours into that fragile ceasefire.
Life-threatening heat as record-breaking temperatures hit more than 150 million people across half the country. Amtrak slowing its trains, roads buckling, and widespread power outages hitting thousands. Ginger Z shows us what to expect next. After 28 days and 34 witnesses, the prosecution in the trial of Sean Diddy Combs rests, and the defense quickly follows suit without calling a single witness. When will the jury get the case? In tonight's Prime Focus, when Supreme Court Justice Amy Coney Barrett was appointed to the Supreme Court by President Trump, liberals attacked her as uber conservative, while conservatives called her the protege of their hero, the late Justice Antonin Scalia. 5 years later, many of those same MAGA allies that say they got her to the bench are frustrated. Now, as the High Court prepares to hand down some of its biggest rulings of the year, we'll show you why Barrett has become the one to watch as the justice at the center of a conservative court. And superstars Brandy and Monica are here talking to us about their new tour, what they're working on next, and that song that's left its permanent mark on pop culture.
From ABC News World Headquarters in New York, this is Prime with Linsey Davis.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Linsey Davis. Thanks so much for streaming with us. We begin with a new classified intelligence report offering a stark reality check on the U.S. attack on Iran. Sources who have seen the early intelligence assessment believe Iran's nuclear program may not have been set back years, but rather months. It was the first time those 30,000-pound bunker buster missiles were used, dropped by B-2 bombers that set off from Missouri. The satellite images show the target site signs of damage, holes in the ground, but it's still unclear the extent of the damage below. Sources say the preliminary report also indicates much of Iran's stockpile of enriched uranium was not destroyed because it was moved before the U.S. struck. And as that tenuous ceasefire between Israel and Iran remains intact for now, tonight President Trump is overseas at The Hague in the Netherlands for an annual NATO meeting, shocking some allies with what he had to say. Our chief White House correspondent Mary Bruce is traveling with the president tonight and leads us off. Hey, Mary.
Hey, Lindsay. Well, President Trump has insisted that U.S. strikes against Iran obliterated its nuclear program. But tonight we're learning early intelligence indicates something different. President Trump insists the U.S. strikes on Iran obliterated its nuclear program. But tonight, sources tell us a preliminary Pentagon report indicates at least 2 of the Iranian nuclear facilities targeted were not completely destroyed, and that Iran's program was only set back a few months.
You don't believe that Iran can rebuild its nuclear program?
Iran will never rebuild its nuclear. From there? Absolutely not. That place is under rock. That place is demolished.
But sources say the preliminary report from the Defense Intelligence Agency and U.S. Central Command indicates much of Iran's stockpile of enriched uranium was not destroyed because it was moved before the U.S. struck. The International Atomic Energy Agency has warned nearly 900 pounds of near-weapons-grade uranium is unaccounted for. Sources tell us the Pentagon's early intelligence indicates Iran's centrifuges also remain intact. And though the bombing sealed off the entrances to 2 of the nation's nuclear facilities, they did not destroy their underground structures. Tonight, the White House pushing back. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth saying, based on everything we have seen, and I've seen it all, our bombing campaign obliterated Iran's ability to create nuclear weapons. It comes amid a fragile truce between Iran and Israel, a ceasefire announced by Trump last night. But in the hours before it went into effect, Iran and Israel continuing to strike at each other.
Israel, as soon as we made the deal, they came out and they dropped a load of bombs, the likes of which I'd never seen before. The biggest load that we've seen. I'm not happy with Israel. You know, when I say, okay, now you have 12 hours, you don't go out in the first hour and just drop everything you have on them. So I'm not happy with them. I'm not happy with Iran either.
Trump clearly furious, using an expletive.
We basically have two countries that have been fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what they're doing. Do you understand that?
Soon after, the president speaking with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. And tonight, both Israel and Iran committing to the ceasefire, which for now appears to be holding.
That seems to be positive. Mary Bruce joins us now from the Netherlands. Mary, the president there for that NATO summit, and it said something today that may have angered allies. What can you tell us?
Yeah, Linsey, as the president made his way here to the Netherlands for the NATO summit, the president refusing to commit to Article 5. That's the collective defense agreement among NATO allies. The president saying there are multiple definitions of the agreement, going on to say, I'm committed to being their friends and I'm committed to helping them. Linsey.
All right, Mary Bruce for us there in the Netherlands. Thanks so much, Mary. And let's bring in Ian Pannell live in Tel Aviv for us. Ian, when you hear about this preliminary report that the U.S. strikes only set back Iran's nuclear program by months, what do you make of that, and could it lead to more instability in the region?
Yeah, well, Linsey, I don't think it's just those US Pentagon officials who are saying that. We have two sources telling ABC News it's too early to declare the US and Israeli mission successful. You know, remember the gigantic holes that we saw in the mountain at the Fordo site? Well, the source is saying they still don't know how much enriched uranium may be moved from there in advance, or how many centrifuges are left in the country that could start up again. And one source calling the outcome at Fordo really not good. So despite Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu backing Trump, saying that the three sites that were targeted were destroyed, we absolutely could find ourselves right back where we started, with more instability in the region and potentially another round of conflict. Linsey?
Not what most want. All right, Ian Pannell for us in Tel Aviv. Thanks so much, Ian. A massive Russian strike in Ukraine today, leaving at least 17 dead and 279 injured, including nearly 36 children. Video circulating online shows a large mushroom cloud rising from the scene. One of the blasts blew out windows of a passenger train carrying about 500 people. The mayor of Dnipro, one of the towns hit, has declared today an official day of mourning. More than 150 Americans from Texas to Maine are under heat alerts tonight. Heat index values were in triple digits from St. Louis to Charlotte and up across much of the Northeast today, with several northeastern cities, including Boston, Providence, and Newark, recording their hottest June temperatures on record. Our Janae Norman is tracking it all for us.
Tonight, dangerous searing heat for millions. Power grids strained to the max. Anyone working outside is risking their life. Near Boston, 105-degree heat index in Norfolk. Two firefighters battling a blaze rushed to the hospital for heat exhaustion. FDNY Manhattan Borough Commander Brian Gorman telling me the protective gear that keeps firefighters safe also makes them swelter.
The heat affects their decision-making ability, could affect the muscle capacity as you're operating at a fire, so it's very difficult, very challenging.
Across the Philadelphia area, where they hit the century mark,
we're out here digging trenches. Look at me. I'm soaked.
Workers like Denny Sharp and Roy Jones Jr. just trying to survive.
What do you tell yourself?
Get through today and get home.
Doctors say it's crucial for workers to look out for each other.
So my advice to them is frequent cooling, but also to work in a buddy system so that you can monitor each other for signs of heat illness.
In New York City, as the mercury hit a record-breaking 99 degrees, fans cranking at voting stations, thousands braving the heat to vote in the race for mayor, including candidate and former New York Governor Andrew Cuomo.
Yeah. It's a little warm, but today is the day.
In Queens, Con Edison handing out dry ice to thousands of elderly customers who lost power Monday. Officials begging all city residents to conserve energy.
Linsey, this is peak heat right now in the Northeast and still dangerously hot again tomorrow. Temperature soaring into the 90s for a third straight day, officially making it a heat wave, Linsey.
All right, Janae, thank you. Let's get right to ABC's chief meteorologist, Ginger Z. Ginger, is it too early for me to ask when this heat is going to subside?
Not at all, because for you, you get to shave off 30 degrees by the time we reach Thursday and Friday. Not for everybody, though, so we'll go ahead and go through what's happened here. By tomorrow, it'll be the third day in a row for many that we head up ahead of 90 degrees, which will make it a legitimate heat wave. But we've surpassed that by far in so many cities, and that's why today was a bigger deal. We talked about all-time June record heat, meaning that in Boston, Massachusetts at 102, they have never, since records began, and probably before that, seen a temperature like that in the month of June. So Manchester, New Hampshire did it, Providence, Rhode Island, and Newark, New Jersey tied at 103. Here's what's going to happen is tomorrow morning, we have the third morning in a row where you walk out and it is just muggy and sweaty, and you've got the core body temperature struggling even at that hour, 8 a.m. You can see even Louisville is close to 90, but look at Philadelphia at 93. Then as that cold front approaches, it's going to squeeze out one more day ahead of it with heat indices above 100. Washington, D.C. will feel like 105, Charlotte 108. And then that cold front will eventually be moving through.
All right. Stay hydrated, everybody. Ginger, thank you.
You got it.
The prosecution rested in the sex trafficking trial of Sean Diddy Combs, and the defense did the same shortly thereafter. Following 6 weeks of proceedings, what comes next? Our Aaron Katursky is back at the courthouse tonight.
Tonight, the criminal case against Sean Combs is nearing an end, and the man who made a living with lyrics said nothing in his own defense. Is it your decision not to testify in this case? Judge Arun Subramanian asked, and Combs responded, that is solely my decision. Combs also complimenting the judge. I want to tell you, thank you. You're doing an excellent job. Defense attorneys called no witnesses and rested their case today moments after prosecutors rested theirs. For more than 6 weeks, jurors heard from 34 witnesses, including ex-girlfriends, former employees, male escorts, and rapper Kid Cudi. They watched nearly an hour of explicit video showing Cassie Ventura and a woman known by the pseudonym Jane having sex with male prostitutes. The prosecution is seeking to prove that the music mogul was running a criminal enterprise that trafficked these women. He denies it. The defense argued the sex was consensual and asked for an acquittal, telling the judge the government has failed to meet its burden. The jury will hear closing arguments beginning Thursday, and Linsey could begin deliberating the case late Friday. Linsey?
All right, Aaron, thank you. So let's bring in ABC News legal contributor Bernarda Villalona. Bernarda, thanks so much for joining us. So as we just heard Aaron say there, the defense has maintained all the sex that they've seen, heard about, it's consensual. How did they try to prove that with their last witness?
So in terms of, well, the prosecution.
The
prosecution has proven their case beyond a reasonable doubt. So remember that Sean Combs is facing 5 counts, racketeering conspiracy being the highest count. When we're dealing with racketeering conspiracy, that Combs enterprise was an enterprise that was built with the agreement to engage in criminal activity. But remember that the enterprise doesn't have to be solely for the purpose of criminal activity. And who's part of that enterprise? Personal assistants, KK, the chief of staff, the security guards that we heard so much about, that their pictures are in evidence. And in terms of what did they do in terms of the criminality, you have that these security guards having to deal with the kidnapping of Capricorn Clark on 2 different occasions. One dealing with the lie detector test, and the second one when she was put inside of the car and taken to Kid Cudi's house. So you have that, and you have that witness that testified without even dealing with Jane or Cassie. In terms of the bribery, you had the security guard from Intercontinental Hotel who came in and said that he spoke to Sean Combs over the phone, and that Sean Combs did ask him about getting that video and any remnants of that video, and that when he met with him at the hotel, KK was present as well as the security guards, and that Sean Combs gave him $100,000. So you have that one. That is easy. When you're dealing with the arson, you have Kid Cudi, who came off so credible inside of that courtroom that he said that, look, you saw the pictures, you saw his car, there was a Molotov cocktail in it, and that his car was burned. But before that even happened, you have the message from Cassie of what Sean Combs had threatened her with, in the sense of saying that something's going to happen and I'm not going to be in the country when it happens. And guess what? Days later, it happens. Now, the prosecution only has to prove 2 predicate acts. And that's not even dealing with the sex trafficking or the transportation to engage in prostitution. So you have that with the racketeering conspiracy. Transportation to engage in prostitution, you have 2 counts, 1 for Cassie, 1 for Jade. Consent is not a defense when you're dealing with that. Did you transport escorts to engage in sexual activities, and were they paid? Absolutely. You have the invoices, the hotel records, you have the travel records, you have the text messages, you have the money being exchanged. So that's an easy one for this jury, even without dealing with the credibility. Sex trafficking, I think it's a bit more difficult when you're dealing with Jane because there's too much of a back and forth. I did it to please my lover. I didn't want to do it, but yes, I still did it, but I didn't tell him. But then I did tell him at this time. She was all over the place. So I think that's much harder. But with Cassie, when you're dealing with the violence, I think that is much easier for the jury to be able to comprehend, because especially that incident at the Intercontinental Hotel, while people want to say it's domestic violence, guess what was happening inside of that hotel room? A freak off. And Sean Combs struck Cassie inside of that room. When she tried to get away, he did what he did inside of that lobby of that elevator shaft. And then you have that when the security guard went to the room, guess who was sitting on a bed? An escort. So I think that is much easier for the prosecution to prove. But ultimately, it's going to be up to the jury to decipher all of this and apply the facts to the law.
But as an attorney, you think the prosecution has met their burden, or do you think that the defense has created reasonable doubt?
I think the defense has created reasonable doubt when you're dealing with the charges having to deal with Jane, because Jane was all over the place and you don't have that violence factor that you have with Cassie. So I think the defense has a better chance of winning on the count of sex trafficking having to deal with Jane. Also, you got to think in terms of the cross-examination that the defense did of dealing with Jane, a lot of it had to deal with all these love texts, all these appreciation texts, how Jane was saying that she loved what happened last night, or that she enjoyed it, that she started talking very sexually explicit messages that she was sending to Sean Combs. So while she's saying now on the stand that she didn't want to engage in that, what she was projected to Sean Combs was something different.
All right, so closing arguments expected on Thursday?
Yes, Thursday and Friday. And you got to think, Linsey, closing arguments is a huge moment for attorneys, for the prosecution and the defense. Why? Because it's the last time that these attorneys get to speak to this jury and argue to this jury their respective positions. And for the prosecutor especially, you give them direction, you show them how the facts meet the law, and you show them how you're proving your case beyond a reasonable doubt. The defense, they want to sprinkle some reasonable doubt because it just takes one reasonable doubt for them to have to come back with an acquittal.
All right. I know you're going to be back with us. Bernarda, thank you so much as always. Police say 14 suspects have been arrested after nearly 150 people were allegedly jabbed with needles at a music festival in France. Most of the victims were women and reported feeling symptoms such as hot flashes, dizziness, loss of consciousness, and visible bruising on the skin. French police are now warning festival goers to be vigilant and seek help if they feel any symptoms at all. Investigators say it's still not clear whether substances have been detected in the blood samples that were taken from the victims. Now to the dramatic images after a violent Border Patrol detention. It involved masked border agents and an undocumented immigrant at his landscaping job. His 3 sons are all U.S. Marines. Here's ABC's Trevor All.
Give me your hand. Tonight, a controversial, violent Border Patrol detention caught on camera in California. Masked agents holding down 48-year-old Narcisco Barranco in the Santa Ana street, repeatedly punching him as he's on the ground. Barranco heard screaming and crying, resisting as they take him into a van. Barranco's the father of 3 U.S. Marines, approached while working a landscaping job. His son Alejandro, a Marine veteran, now calling his dad's detention frustrating and inhumane.
I was really mad, and then I was really sad. I just wish I could have been there to help him.
The Department of Homeland Security says the agents were defending themselves, claiming Barranco assaulted those officers with a weed whacker, swinging it at an agent's face. The video posted by the agency appears to show him trying to avoid detention, running through the street with that weed whacker as he's sprayed by the agents, even attempting to open a car door before being tackled.
From what I'm thinking is he saw these individuals come up with masks, civilian clothes with guns out. I'm pretty sure he got scared.
In a statement, DHS says the agents took appropriate action and followed their training to use the minimum amount of force necessary to resolve the situation. It's another example of the Trump administration's sweeping deportation policy. Earlier this month, ICE agents seen chasing farm workers through strawberry fields in Southern California.
Our thanks to Trevor Ault. 11 Iranian nationals in the U.S. illegally were arrested by ICE agents as the U.S. carried out strikes on Iran over the weekend. The arrests happened in cities across the country. According to Homeland Security, all 11 men were under final orders of removal. One woman, a U.S. citizen, was also taken into custody. Officials say she threatened to shoot an ICE agent and was harboring one of the men. Amazon is working to make it easier for even more Americans to get same-day delivery. About 1 in 5 Americans live in rural areas that are harder to reach with fast and inexpensive shipping. But now Amazon is making a multi-billion-dollar push to change that. Our chief business correspondent, Rebecca Jarvis, has more.
Amazon expanding same-day and next-day Prime delivery to more than 4,000 rural areas by the end of the year. It's part of a $4 billion investment to triple the size of Amazon's delivery network by the end of 2026 and create 100,000 jobs.
That is based on two big innovations. One is regionalizing our network and using hybrid hubs. And the second is the application of AI in order to get perfect placement of the right item at the right time for the right customer.
Just last week, Amazon CEO Andy Jassy told employees he expects to reduce Amazon's corporate workforce in the next few years due to efficiency gains from using AI, including with delivery. And now customers in these rural areas will have quicker access to a variety of goods, including non-perishable groceries, household items, and over-the-counter medication.
Of the top items reordered through same day, 90% of them are in the everyday essentials part of our store. That part of our store is growing twice as fast as the rest of Amazon.
Meantime, Walmart is amping up its drone delivery, recently announcing expansion to 100 stores in 5 new cities. Walmart says customers using drone delivery are getting their items in 30 minutes or less.
Our thanks to Rebecca Jarvis. Coming up, Waymo's robo-taxis are taking on new cities where you can find a driverless ride now. But first, in our By the Numbers, the state of nuclear arms around the world and an expert's insight on where Iran's nuclear ambitions currently stand. Conflict with Iran has reignited concerns about a possible nuclear conflict. So tonight, we're taking a look at which countries have nuclear weapons by the numbers. 9 countries: Russia, the United States, China, France, the United Kingdom, Pakistan, India, Israel, and North Korea currently have nuclear weapons. Altogether, there are roughly 12,300 nuclear warheads in the world, with more than 9,600 in active military stockpiles. That's according to the Federation of Atomic Scientists. With 5,500 confirmed nuclear weapons, Russia has the most. The U.S. follows with 5,044. Together, the U.S. and Russia account for 90% of the world's nuclear weapons. 4 countries have given up their nuclear weapons and shut down their programs. The former Soviet republics of Belarus, Kazakhstan, and Ukraine returned their weapons to Russia after the Soviet Union's collapse, and South Africa dismantled its program in 1994. 7 countries: Argentina, Brazil, Libya, South Korea, Sweden, Australia, and Taiwan once pursued nuclear weapons programs but have voluntarily abandoned those programs. Only one country, Iran, is considered a threshold state, meaning it has developed the ability to build nuclear weapons and has threatened to do so. We want to take a closer look at where Iran's nuclear capabilities may stand now and the chances for a nuclear agreement in the aftermath of the attacks. For that, we're joined by Kelsey Davenport. She's the director of the Non-Proliferation Policy Arms Control Association. Kelsey, thanks so much for talking with us tonight. Today, sources are telling ABC News that an initial intelligence report found that the U.S. military strikes did not completely destroy the country's nuclear program and likely only set it back by months. What's your reaction to those initial findings?
The initial findings are not surprising. I mean, Iran has spent years burying and hardening its nuclear facilities to withstand an attack such as this. So it's not surprising that the United States was only able to damage some of these facilities. The unfortunate thing is that choosing to attack Iran while the U.S. and Iran were negotiating is also setting back diplomatic efforts. The U.S. has lost a lot of credibility at the negotiating table that's going to make an agreement more challenging going forward.
And there have been indications, of course, that Iran moved much of their enriched uranium supply in advance of the attacks. Explain why that's so significant.
Well, Iran is enriching uranium to near weapons grade level, 60%. And this material can be much more quickly enriched to that 90%. So if Iran has diverted these materials from its declared sites, if it's stashed them at unknown locations, along with centrifuges, which are the machines that are used to enrich uranium, it could quickly reconstitute a uranium enrichment capacity that would bring Iran back to the threshold of nuclear weapons. So that's why, even though some of Iran's facilities were damaged, the program has not been significantly set back. And more concerningly, Iran may now be more politically motivated to actually develop nuclear weapons.
Early in his term, President Trump said reaching a nuclear deal with Iran was a priority. At this point, do you see a path for that to happen?
A nuclear deal with Iran still provides the best possible path to sustainably block Iran's pathways to nuclear weapons. I mean, diplomacy works. It worked with Iran in the past with the 2015 nuclear deal, and it can work again. But Trump is going to have to figure out a way to restore U.S. credibility, to put a pragmatic deal on the table that meets U.S. non-proliferation objectives, but also Iranian demands, because Iran is not going to want to be perceived as negotiating under pressure or capitulating in a deal because of the U.S. and the Israeli strikes.
I guess because we're just coming out of Biden numbers where we were pointing out a number of countries that actually do have nuclear weapons, many might be saying, well, why are these countries allowed to have nuclear weapons, but Iran is not?
Well, Iran did voluntarily agree to forego nuclear weapons when it joined the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. So legally, Iran has barred itself from developing nuclear weapons. There is a real risk, though, that sentiment in Iran is shifting, and that policymakers around the supreme leader see the U.S. and Israeli attacks as reason to question Iran's membership in the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. And to consider pursuing nuclear weapons. I mean, there's a stronger argument growing now that Iran needs nuclear weapons to defend against future attack. So we should be watching to see if Iran withdraws from the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty in the coming months.
If you had a seat at the negotiation table, trying again to get this deal done, what key points would you try to establish? What concessions might you make?
Well, there are still a lot of unknowns about the scope of Iran's program, what's left, where that highly enriched uranium is. So I would first prioritize trying to get International Atomic Energy Agency inspectors back into Iran just to assess what's left so that the U.S. can actually develop a negotiating position, based on Iran's current capabilities. But I think the U.S. also has to be a lot more realistic about what it puts on the table for Iran in return. We know from the experience with the 2015 nuclear deal that sanctions relief only provided some limited benefits. So being more flexible, more creative with some of the incentives to ensure that Iran sees value in constraining and limiting its nuclear program going forward, that type of balanced formula is much more likely to work towards a successful nuclear agreement.
Non-Proliferation Policy Arms Control Association Director Kelsey Davenport, we thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Coming up, as the Supreme Court prepares to hand down its most consequential decisions of the year, our Devin Dwyer takes a closer look at the justice who is confounding her critics and angering some allies in our prime focus. And later, why the power couple behind the season's most talked about wedding, they're making a last-minute venue change. Welcome back, everyone. When President Trump appointed Justice Amy Coney Barrett to replace the late Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg to the Supreme Court, outraged liberals attacked her as too right-wing, while elated conservatives swooned over the promotion of a protege of their hero, the late Justice Antonin Scalia. 5 years later, are any MAGA allies having buyer's remorse as the High Court prepares to hound down some of its most consequential decisions of the year? Devin Dwyer has our prime focus examining why Barrett is front and center, confounding her critics and angering some of those who say they helped her to get to the highest court in the land.
It was 5 years ago that President Trump celebrated Justice Amy Coney Barrett as a crowning achievement.
I know you will make us all very
Very proud.
But now the junior conservative on the Supreme Court has become a growing target of MAGA movement rage.
We saw Justice Amy Coney Barrett side with John Roberts and the court's liberal wing. What a surprise there.
I know that Amy Coney Barrett is a rattled law professor with her head up her.
I'm worried about her. She's a little squishy.
And some right-wing voices even brand Barrett a DEI judge. Sources tell ABC News Trump is privately fuming with frustration. So what kind of justice has she been?
There's nothing in her work as a justice that is incongruous with what we knew from her scholarly career or from the confirmation proceedings.
To her critics,
she's probably a little bit more moderate, a little bit hesitant than other people may have predicted.
Constitutional scholar Josh Blackman is among a movement of conservatives that want Barrett to step down.
Her decisions and her votes have been pretty conservative, right?
Oh, no doubt she's conservative. I think she's just cautious.
Barrett has voted to back major rightward shifts in American law, overturning Roe v. Wade, ending affirmative action, limiting the power of federal agencies, and expanding the rights of gun owners.
I believe Americans of all backgrounds deserve an independent Supreme Court.
But she's also increasingly taken positions at odds with the right wing.
Justice Barrett has emerged as the center figure, the swing justice on the current Roberts court.
When the court unanimously blocked Colorado from kicking Trump off the 2024 ballot, Barrett wrote separately to chide her conservative colleagues for an opinion she called unnecessarily broad, and admonish the liberal justices for issuing a statement strident in tone. She signed on to that historic decision granting Trump sweeping immunity from criminal charges for his alleged effort to overturn the 2020 election, but broke with the other conservatives to insist the president could still be prosecuted. And in a high-stakes dispute over the nation's first religious charter school, a conservative goal backed by the White House, Barrett recused herself from the case, the resulting 4-4 tie giving liberal opponents of the school a win.
She's not just following the partisan political winds. She's not just following the latest fashions in judging. She's following what she thinks of as fundamental principles of legal judgment.
When Trump made emergency appeals to the high court earlier this year, Barrett joined Chief Justice John Roberts and all three liberal justices to deny him relief. In January, she voted to reject Trump's bid to delay sentencing for his New York felony convictions, and later she voted to force the administration to pay out nearly $2 billion in foreign aid money that Trump had wanted frozen.
I don't know if she's approaching the job with sort of consistency and sort of backbone that you would want from a Supreme Court justice.
Going further, some of Barrett's critics claim the breaks with Trump are personal, pointing to her facial expression after the president's joint address to Congress in March.
That look to me was a strange look, and maybe we're reading into it. Maybe there's nothing there, but it seemed kind of weird.
That's about as close to stink eye as you can get. That's not a happy, I've had a couple of my ex-wives look at me like that.
Justice Barrett did not respond to ABC News' requests for comment, but her friends and former colleagues say the criticism is unfair and overblown. Data show Barrett has most often aligned with fellow Trump appointee Justice Brett Kavanaugh, and least aligned with liberal Justice Sonia Sotomayor, a strong conservative voting record, even if some of her votes have disappointed.
There are some people on both sides of the aisle, I suppose, who their understanding of a judge is a good judge is the one who always gives you what you want. I don't think that's ever been what most Americans want judges to be.
Still, Republicans are haunted by their past picks for the high court, who later morphed into frequent votes for the left rather than the right, prompting comparisons between Barrett and the late Justice David Souter, who was appointed by President George H.W. Bush and later branded a turncoat.
There's no really comparison to be made between her and Justice Souter, except for that each of them is being consistent to the judicial philosophy that they brought to the bench.
After keeping a relatively low profile during her early years on the bench, Barrett is now having a moment in the spotlight. This fall, she'll release her first book as a justice explaining her judicial philosophy, and she's stepping up public appearances in tandem with the court's senior liberal justice, Sonia Sotomayor, to promote civility.
I know that Justice Sotomayor respects me and we have affection for one another. I respect her very much, even when we disagree deeply about the merits.
President Trump has been respectful of Barrett in public,
She's a very good woman. She's very smart.
And he still needs her vote in several major legal challenges to his agenda. Meantime, in a turn few could have expected 5 years ago, even some of her liberal critics are offering praise too.
What makes a good justice is a justice who follows principles. What makes a great justice is a justice who follows those principles even when the pressures of the world are saying to do something different, and a justice who can articulate the reasons for her vision. And Justice Barrett is on her way to doing all of those things.
Barrett defying expectations and now closely watched as a justice at the center of a conservative court.
Many keeping their eyes on Barrett. Our thanks to Devin Dwyer for that. Coming up, about a third of the continental U.S. can see the northern lights tonight. We'll tell you when and where you can look up. And 25 years since Brandy and Monica topped the charts, they are reuniting on tour. And join us here in studio. Where to see the northern lights as they come into view in parts of the U.S. The latest city to get driverless taxi service, and Oklahoma City turns out in force to celebrate their championship team. These stories and more in tonight's rundown. On Capitol Hill today, Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. defended a Make America Healthy Again report that was found to use data that didn't exist, saying the overarching assertions were accurate. But Representative Raul Ruiz, who is a doctor, pressed the secretary on the quality of the administration's research before making changes to public health policy.
It isn't data-driven, and it isn't based in fact, science, or reality, sir. It's wrong.
Researchers have speculated that the citations were AI generated, which created the errors. Kennedy struggled to defend the report amidst interruptions and crosstalk, but he maintained the arc of the research was accurate and that the issues were fixed quickly. Tomorrow, Kennedy will host the first meeting of his newly appointed CDC Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices. The committee will be voting on recommendations for 5 different vaccines already approved by the FDA. The National Transportation Safety Board issued its final report on that incident on an Alaska Airlines jet last year where a door flew off mid-flight. The agency found that 4 bolts that held the door plug in place were missing following a repair. NTSB Chair Jennifer Homendy credited the fast-acting crew for ensuring everyone on board survived the terrifying incident. The northern lights may be visible in 14 northern states late tonight, from Washington to Maine, according to space weather predictions from NOAA. Skywatchers be warned, the aurora borealis is notoriously difficult to predict, and its intensity can vary depending on several different factors. Anyone hoping to catch the stunning lights will need to be far from any city lights and avoid cloud cover. Amazon founder Jeff Bezos and former TV news anchor Lauren Sanchez are moving their celebrity-studded wedding party to an isolated, less accessible part of Venice. The move is in response to security concerns and to prevent the risk of protests. The billionaire tech tycoon and his fiancée had earmarked a location in Cannaregio, a popular and central nightlife area for the celebrations. For weeks, some local residents and pressure groups have been complaining that the event will turn the scenic city of gondolas and palazzi into a private amusement park for the rich and threaten peaceful blockades. Waymo's robo-taxis began carrying passengers through parts of Atlanta today in an expansion of a partnership with Uber. The Waymo robo-taxis are available through the Uber app and cover approximately 65 square miles around Atlanta, but will not yet travel on highways or to the airport. The vehicles feature Waymo's driverless technology known as the Waymo Driver, integrated into battery electric Jaguar I-Pace SUVs. The company says it currently has more than 1,500 autonomous vehicles in its U.S. fleet. Waymo says it also plans to launch its robo-taxis in Miami and Washington, D.C. The people of Oklahoma City are doing something they haven't done in more than a decade, celebrating an NBA championship with a massive parade. The champs beat the Indiana Pacers in 7 games to win the title. Today, thousands of fans line the streets of downtown Oklahoma City to cheer on the reigning NBA champions. And you can just look at it. Now to tonight's Prime Playlist Shuffle, where we sit down with artists who are transforming the music industry. It has been more than 25 years since Brandy and Monica topped the charts for 13 weeks with their double platinum track, The Boy Is Mine, a song that defined a generation and became a cultural phenomenon. Now the R&B legends are reuniting for the first time on tour. Let's take a look.
You ready? I've been ready. What are we waiting for?
What have you been waiting for? Wow. Brandy, Monica, so good to have you all here in studio. The Boy Is Mine tour. I just want to start with that. How long did we have to wait for this moment to happen? What made you all decide? What made you all decide, you know what? Let's give the people what they want.
It's really divine timing. And I think one of the key components for me was us really talking, having relationship. I understood that going on tour was not going to be as simplistic as you do a record, you leave the studio, it gets mixed, mastered, that's it.
Yeah.
A tour means we have to make every decision together. We have to spend time with one another, respect each other's spaces, communicate consistently on every single piece and part. And so it was just something we both were ready for.
So the song came out in 1998. I was 21 at the time, right at my peak of, you know, having a good time and enjoying music. The song still resonates today. What is it about that song that you think it's still so relevant and people want to still hear that song? And did you know at the time when you were making it, like, this is it?
I mean, I don't think I didn't know. Did you know?
I had no idea.
I just felt like it was going to be magical. I felt like it was going to resonate, but I didn't know it would be around 27 years later. I mean, that's unbelievable. That's a kind of magic that doesn't happen very often, and I'm blessed to be a part of something that special and that long-lasting.
You all have had a falling out in the past, since reconciled. At what point did you all come together to say, you know what, we're grown women. Let's do this. Let's reunite.
I mean, to be fair here, especially now since we've had children and I have teenagers, you've had now no longer teenagers, she's 23.
Yes, unbelievable.
When you think about, I was 17 and she was 18, you have to give us the same grace we have to remind ourselves to give each other. Because the reality is that something that wasn't real became real, and that can be dangerous. And so us taking control of our own narrative, our futures, and hopefully being an example, because I see that there is a lot of conflict, and it's not just women, it's the men too.
Sure.
You can see conflict in every aspect of music. It's not just rap, it's in every genre almost.
And I think we're also a part of an industry that got off on that, like putting women against each other and creating feuds and rivalry, which is why I wanted to capitalize off of that. Like, I don't even know Monica to not like her. Like, work with her. That's what I'm gonna do. That's what I felt. And we're here.
And I'm curious, because Brandy, you have a memoir that's coming out, and growing up so fast and in the limelight with a spotlight on you. What made you decide, I'm going to write a book and tell even more, divulge even more of my life?
Because I feel like I want to give my voice to my story. I just feel like I deserve that right. I have that right. And it's something very therapeutic about putting understanding and putting power into what you've been through, and to be able to come out on the other side and be proud of yourself.
And Monica, I'm also curious, because you're making new music with a country album.
Yes.
Tell us about how that opens itself to a different kind of storytelling.
Open Roads was really my therapy. It was me. I stepped away from everything I knew. I went to Nashville with Brandy Carlisle, and it was live instrumentation and meeting people that didn't work after 7 p.m. because they went home to their families.
Wow. Oh, wow.
Something that oftentimes people would attempt to make me feel guilty for. I would take 2-3 years off completely and just be off the grid, focus solely on the 4 people that mean the most to me.
Yeah, but you always come back.
I come back. In Nashville, it is a thing.
Yeah.
Family is a thing. I felt welcome there.
Yeah.
Yes, I felt so much love there. And it was like this rebirth of my love for what music really is You take the equipment away. You have band members there every night in the studio. It was just something that was so nostalgic but new for me, if that makes sense.
It does.
It was both at the same time.
When you guys both look at your paths going forward, your trajectory, do you think this is a new chapter, or is it a comeback? Is it a continuation? How would you, if you were to describe it?
I think it's all of it. I think it's everything you just said. I'm just happy to be a part of it.
And for you as well, Monica?
I think so, because I think it's such a combination of things, because we've both experienced so much, both together and separately. So when you put all of that together and you start creating something like a show like this, it really does take all of you. It is consistently the conversation, the motivation. It is the movement for us. But it's definitely a new chapter in a great way. I don't feel like we've closed the door on what's behind us. It keeps catapulting us. Yeah, it keeps catapulting us, just pushing us forward.
The Boy Is Mine, Monica, Brandy, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Tickets for the Boy Is Mine tour are on sale June 27th via Ticketmaster.
That's right.
We so appreciate the ladies for that conversation. And tonight, remembering Bobby Sherman, World News Tonight anchor David Muir reports.
Bobby Sherman was a 1960s teen idol, a star who turned to public service later in life.
I'll be your baby tonight.
His 1969 top 10 hit Little Woman reached number 3 on the charts.
Hey, little woman, please make up your mind. You've got to come into my world and be the world band. All right now.
A string of hits followed. La La La, If I Had You. And Julie, Do You Love Me? He was an actor on the ABC show Here Come the Brides before turning to music. Dick Clark asking him about the lessons fame and music taught him about life.
Really overwhelmed by the power of television, that you're so immediately accepted by so many families when they invite you into their living rooms every night.
Decades later, he would turn to public service, volunteering with the LAPD and working as a technical reserve police officer and a reserve deputy sheriff for the San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department. Earlier this year, Bobby Sherman revealing he'd been diagnosed with stage 4 kidney cancer. Tonight, his wife, Bridget, along with actor and musician John Stamos, who is an ambassador for Sherman's charity, announcing his passing. His wife saying Bobby left this world holding my hand, just as he held up our life with love, courage, and unwavering grace through all 29 beautiful years of marriage. And John Stamos saying, from one ex-teen idol to another, rest in peace, Bobby Sherman. Bobby Sherman was 81.
Our thanks to David Muir for that. And that is our show for this hour. I'm Linsey Davis. Be sure to stay tuned to ABC News Live for more context and analysis of the day's top stories. Thanks so much for streaming with us.